Did you know that 1 in 3 women and 1 in 4 men will face some form of sexual violence during their lifetime? These numbers are overwhelming, yet this issue is often shrouded in silence. It's time to bring it into the light and make a change.
Sexual violence is a widespread and profoundly damaging issue that affects people of all genders, ages, and background. At its core, sexual violence is not driven by desire. It is assertion of power and control, violating an individual's anatomy and right to consent.
Welcome to Truth and Trauma, a Survivors Network. My name is Sylvia.
And my name is Lucy.
So, before we jump in, we want to acknowledge that the topics we'll discuss can be difficult and emotional. If at any point you need to pause, step away, or skip ahead, please do. Your mental health and emotional well-being is the most important thing.
To continue from part 1.
I also want to know what you guys think sexual violence is, how social media has affected sexual violence, and if you've seen like any myths or anything that is not true at all, that puts sexual violence in this certain light, and that stops the victim from contacting a trusted adult or contacting places that they could gain help from.
Yeah, good question. So most of our worlds are surrounded by social media. Everything that we do is social media pretty much these days, especially after COVID. We see that as we shifted a world to virtual in an instant, a lot of things have stayed that way. And so social media is a beautiful space for solidarity, for the things that you were mentioning, for groups to come together or individuals to come together or to create a community of a support group, right? So that's beautiful that those things can happen on TikTok and people can comment on different videos and show their support and can be there for each other. But there's good and bad to everything, and that stands true for social media as well. And I'll let Madison talk a little bit more about this, but what we're seeing a lot as it relates to social media is sextortion. And what sextortion is when someone exploits a child through online means. And so basically, I'll give you an example. You're in a chat room and you're talking to somebody that you think is up here your age. So, I'm a 16-year-old female and I think I'm talking to a 16-year-old female who I'm just trying to be friends with, right? I'm just trying to find some social interaction. I'm not doing anything that I don't want to do. I'm just really having some healthy conversation. And it turns out on the other side of that computer, that's not a 16-year-old female. That's a 75-year-old male who's in another country, right? And we see that all the time. And then before you know it, literally in minutes, they are asking you to send them different pictures of yourself. And then they're telling you, oh, if you send me this picture, I won't ask for anything else. Okay, so I send this one picture that's inappropriate. And now it's like, well, if you don't send me $1,000, I'm going to put this picture all over the internet, or I'm going to send it to your mom, or I'm going to send it to your principal. So we're seeing a lot of that happening, is that conversations start off very innocent and then they lead into what's called sextortion. And really what I want to hit with that is that there's always help for those situations. It's never too late. And a lot of times we're seeing that teens find themselves in those situations and they think it's too late. Oh, well, they already have my picture. It's too late. There's nothing else I can do. And that leads to unfortunate situations. But there is always something that the agencies that support children in these situations can do and they can help with. And if you don't know what Take It Down is, look it up. If you're listening to this, you guys too, if there's a picture that is ever posted of you or that you've sent, there's an agency specifically designated called literally Take It Down that can help process through some of these. So I want anybody listening to know that if you ever find yourselves in that situation, there's always help out there to help you get out of that.
I don't know how much more I could add. That was very beautifully explained. To kind of touch on your point about some of the downsides of things, I think that with social media, most of the downsides can be rooted in the fact that everybody has access to everybody. So, and you're hiding behind a screen. So you think of things that kids and teenagers may talk about, or even adults talk about, cyberbullying, things like that. You're behind a screen, you can say things and do things, and maybe never have to face that person in real life. Maybe never have to face consequences for what you said or what you did or how you treated somebody. And it's the same way with sexual violence, with sextortion. People have access to so many different people. And we are seeing that the ages for children who are interacting on gaming platforms, social media apps, just keeps getting younger and younger and younger, which again brings us back to having these conversations with our younger kids as well. But I think that access is something that can be dangerous because you have more and more people reaching out to you. And like Ashley said, unfortunately, with sextortion, it is something that is very prevalent. It is very real. But she's absolutely right that oftentimes with things online, because things can be difficult to be taken down, people say, you know, what's posted on there forever stays on there forever. Don't put something on social media if you don't want your future employer to see it, like all different things like that we talk about all the time. But even, and while there is benefit to that caution, a lot of those things are very true. It is important to know that it is never too late. Even with the complexities of social media, no matter how far gone a situation you think is or may be, it is never too late, and you can always reach out to somebody to get help for those things. And there are different programs and platforms and things that can be done to help situations like that. And I think just like anything, like Ashley was saying, and like you were saying too, that there are good sides and bad sides to everything. There are also great things that you can do over social media to advocate for victims of sexual violence, for victims of anything, to advocate for healthy lifestyles, to advocate for healthy mental health. If you see something, say something is a term that a lot of people use in the victim services field, and I think that is helpful on social media. If you see a picture, you see somebody make a post, you see a comment that's inappropriate, that is something that you have seen that is concerning, and say something about it. So I like to remind people of that too.
They've shared everything that's important. We had the FBI here a little bit ago in collaboration with the Children's Center to talk about human trafficking. And I think the biggest, most important thing they said was, if it's too good to be true, it probably is, which is really hard for parents to remember, even as adults, but for kids too. So I thought that was a good point, but I want to take this a whole different angle. I think in terms of, you asked how to speak up, I think the really good thing about social media most recently is it allows an avenue for people to speak up and get help and hope. We now have therapy that's accessible via text. So if you're someone who doesn't want anyone to know you're getting therapy, or you want to do it in a very private way, we now have access to therapy virtually, but you don't have to do it virtually with a screen. You can do it over the phone. You can do it over text. So I think that's the other thing that the internet allows in a positive way, is a way to reach out and get help in a lot of different ways that we didn't have when you had to go in person for therapy. So I think that's a positive that I wanted to kind of share too.
Actually, because I am on social media all the time. So I've actually been watching a lot of YouTube videos, and a lot of YouTubers I've seen have been being sponsored by this therapy group called Better Health. This is not sponsored, by the way. So I'm just mentioning what I've been seeing, and a lot of YouTubers are pushing for virtual therapy. Like, obviously, therapy can be costly, and sometimes you can't always go in person. But from what I've heard, Better Health is like a virtual online therapy session where you can talk to different therapists for like a good price. I'm not exactly sure how true that is, but it's just something I've been seeing, and I feel like sexual violence and mental health and everything like that has been taken really serious nowadays, which is a good thing, because back in the olden days, I don't know how long ago that was, but I'm pretty sure it was pretty recent, these things are usually just brushed aside because of cultural norms and religious norms and stuff like that. Of course, we will be linking everything talked about today in the description somewhere, but I'm sure Sylvia has something else to add, because I've been seeing her typing away here. So I'm just gonna hand the microphone to Sylvia.
So COVID was mentioned, and it made me think about how people, if they are close to others, like you said it's more likely for them to experience something to those who are close with. So was there like a rise or a fall in cases in the time period of COVID?
Yeah, so twofold to this question. So a lot of calls that come in about children come from what's called mandated reporters, and those are therapists and teachers and guidance counselors and doctors, and those who are required to make reports of child abuse or neglect if they have suspicion. And so during COVID, right, a lot of children weren't seeing mandated reporters in their life. We weren't going to school. We were minimally going to the doctors. We weren't seeing each other. We probably weren't doing in-person therapy. All of those things kind of stopped and slowed down for a while. And so you'll see that there was possibly a decline in calls during that time because we didn't have mandated reporters that had access to kids, again, maybe that mandated reporter was the only trusted adult in that child's life, and that child did not have access to that person. So you may see some of that, but that does not mean that the abuse declined. I would be inclined to say that the abuse actually heightened during COVID because we were all stuck at home. Mostly we're seeing a lot of mental health impacts from COVID because people were isolated for so long, and were stuck in their homes for so long. And, life really changed during that time and after. And so to not have that social interaction, whether it be at school as a teen or be able to go into your work office every day and collaborate with your coworkers, that really impacted all of us in general as a society. And so I think we're seeing a lot of that, some mental health things that are coming out of COVID because of some of the effects of the isolation and such.
I just wanted to add that we worked in partnership during COVID with the Children's Center and JFS to do a special training for our teachers and how to recognize signs of abuse over a computer. So it was a very interesting time, as you guys are fully aware. But we had a lot of mandated reporters, being our teachers, come to us and say, I think I see abuse, but I don't know because I'm on a computer and now I see inside a person's house. And I'm not sure if that's abuse, meaning like a neglectful situation, being it's a little messy, it's dirty. So we did a training video with staff to show how can you spot signs of abuse virtually. So it's an interesting time where we tried because we saw a decrease in calls, but as Ashley shared, that's because you guys aren't here for us to look at. We're looking at you over a screen. But teachers actually saw different things because now they're in your home, right? So for high schoolers, a lot of you were in your beds, like on the screen, cameras off, cameras on. But for elementary kids, sometimes they were in the middle of their living room. Teachers overheard things. So it was a very interesting time for all of us. So we tried to pivot and learn of some different ways. But it was a really good question.
From what I'm seeing personally, I think that we're all trying to make our way to a better society, and I always think that's a good thing. I genuinely believe that if everybody just come together, which is unrealistic, but I think that if everybody just come together and stand up from what they see, whether it be a friend, family member, even strangers sometimes, if they're willing to stand up and speak out against what they've seen, I think it would make this place a lot safer because there's this effect. I think Dr. Kwolek might know this since she studies psychology. So in psychology, I heard this bystander effect where you would just stand by and walk away, even though someone's calling for help, in the assumption that someone else will help. I learned this a while ago. I don't remember the case, but there was this lady who was being raped and she was being beaten and she was calling for help, but there was at least like 50-60 people who walked by who didn't help. We call that the bystander effect, where they assume that someone else will help. I'm not sure if she survived or not. I don't think she did, but it was something very unfortunate that I think that everybody should be aware of. I think I'm going to hand the microphone to Dr. Kwolek so she could better explain this, because I don't have a PhD in psychology.
No, you don't need a PhD. I'm glad, because we teach that in our psychology class here. It's a very sad case. It was in an apartment complex too, and it was in the opening part of an apartment complex too. He dragged her across and lots of people saw. But no, you described it beautifully. You did it well. And we talk about the bystander effect with bullying, with all kinds of things. And they've done follow-up studies too where the same thing happens. It's that groupthink phenomenon where, or you, again, the more modern day would be if you're driving down the highway and you see someone on the side of the road, people will assume someone else called 911, so I can just let it go by. So you did a great job. You described it very, very well. But unfortunately, no, she passed away. And again, if someone would have called sooner, maybe she wouldn't have. If someone would have called sooner, they ended up catching the person, but maybe they would have done it a lot sooner and saved her life. So I agree with you. It'd be a better world if we all just looked out, see something, say something, all those things. So, and maybe there'd be no children's center.
And it would be an even better world that people just wouldn't do these things to each other, right? Yeah.
It takes a dark mind to think of these things and do it. I mean, it's one thing to say it, but it's a whole entire different thing to do it. Even if you're just hearing people say such things, you should tell them, stop. This isn't right. You shouldn't be saying these things, let alone think about it and let it come out of your mouth. I think Sylvia has something else to add to it too.
Yeah, I don't agree with people ignoring what they see around them. And I know that in past generations, people haven't really been educated on abuse and sexual violence. And now that time is changing, people have been talking about it more. What do you think made that change?
So my opinion is that more people are coming forward to talk about what's happened to them. And you mentioned we're talking a lot about mental health nowadays, right? Way more than we did 5 years ago, even. And so really just coming to terms with the fact that these things are happening in every community. A lot of people don't want to believe that it's happening in their own backyard, but as Madison mentioned earlier, abuse knows no boundaries. It doesn't matter what ethnicity you are. It doesn't matter what age you are. It doesn't matter what hobbies you have. It doesn't matter if you have a job or not. It can impact anybody, whether it's the perpetrator or the victim. So really just, I think people coming forward and talking about these things and being open to talking about it, then it creates a space for community providers who provide services to then come out. Again, a good thing about social media, right? Let's put our services on social media so that people can look us up and they can see what we do. It's the same with our mental health therapists. They can do things virtually. They can do things online. So in my opinion, it's that more people are talking about it, and which creates solidarity, and then more people are starting to come forward because where other people are starting to talk about it. I also think we're doing a lot of work in the prevention space over the last several years. And going back to talking to our kids about private parts and them being young and how young that they should be, a lot of people might think that it's crazy to talk to a 2 or 3-year-old about those sorts of things. But the reality of it is the younger you talk to children about some of those things, the more you're going to educate them early on about prevention and about their body and about safety. And so I think we're seeing a lot of that too. You know, maybe 5-10 years ago, you would have never heard us say, oh, you should talk to a 2 or 3-year-old about their private parts. We might have been like, whoa, like, let's wait till 5th grade, right? Like, because that's just what we've known. And we're seeing with Aaron's Law and with things that are going on in elementary schools and with kiddos, not only mental health rates skyrocketing in elementary school students, abuse rates skyrocketing in young elementary school students. We're seeing all of those things happening. The stats are showing it. And so we need to put our efforts in that space to make sure that we're doing prevention work there. And I think that it's working. Again, of course, not everything is perfect, and a perfect world is a world without abuse, but we're doing a lot of work to make sure that if something happens to somebody, they can come forward and they're not alone. And I think that's the most important thing.
Just something small to add to that too. I think that not only other people coming forward and sharing their stories is helpful, it gives other children and other victims of crimes courage, but I also think, like I touched on earlier, that there can be a lot of confusion when you're going through something. And sometimes there really are times where a child is hearing something, learning about body safety, hearing something that someone else has been through, and they say, oh, wait, that happened to me. I didn't know that that was wrong, because they didn't have a positive support or a safe, trusted adult to tell them, hey, what's happening isn't right, or what you've experienced is something that is wrong and you shouldn't have had to experience. So I think that's another positive that comes from hearing other people's stories, is not just giving you the courage to come forward and say something, but also there's kind of an education piece to that of like, oh, wait, I did experience that when I was a child, and I didn't even realize how much of an effect it had on me, or how traumatic it actually was, or how it's influenced how I'm operating as a teenager or operating as a young adult. So I think that's another piece too that is always important to remind people of.
With the start of statistics from how high we're seeing, like, oh, so many children are getting abused, and at this age and that age, we see this amount of children's or teenagers or young adults or even elders getting abused. I feel like with how high these statistics are, I think it's because of modern day, because now there's people feeling more comfortable coming out saying these because other people are. And if we're talking about like a decade back, I don't think our stats would be this high because nobody would be brave enough to come out and say these. And I don't think society will be very comfortable with just doing these stats. They're like, oh, these are so uncomfortable. We shouldn't do it, How would this affect our society? How people view us? Of course, now it's changing because everybody's coming out. Everybody is being very supportive of one another. And I'm very happy to see those change, truth to be told.
I am also very happy to see the change that's been going on, because honestly, there was a time that divorce would have been a worse thing than being abused. And I'm glad that we are now in a world that is changing for the better, letting people be educated and getting their knowledge in on what to look for, what they have experienced, and what to know what is right and what is wrong.
I know we're running short on time right now, but I just have one more question, just one more. What about generational trauma? Because when we talk about like sexual violence, we're thinking about this only happened to this person, like your child. But what if it happened to the mother and the grandmother, and now they just see it as normal, air quote on normal, because it shouldn't be. But it's just generational trauma and people don't speak up about it. What is your thoughts on this, and like how do you help people with generational trauma?
Well, I think you answered your own question, because you're exactly right. A lot of times we find ourselves in situations where, oh, well, this happened to me as a child and I'm fine. And I didn't need to have any sort of intervention or any sort of therapy. And or this happened to me as a child and I didn't even know that it was wrong. A lot of what Madison was talking about. So that's very real and that's very true. It's not every situation. Just because it happened to a child doesn't mean that it's something that's generational, but it does happen a lot and it happens very often. And it really just goes back to they don't know any better, right? Like they don't realize that this is wrong. And it just continues to go back to making sure that we are putting those preventative measures in place to help children and adults understand that this is wrong. And a lot of times what you'll see is perhaps a mom brings in her child and something may have happened to her, and then now something happened to her child. And she may have never gotten the opportunity to come to a place like the Children's Center. And she is so grateful that her child has the opportunity to start healing at the age of 12 versus she started healing at the age of 30, right? That's just like a really generic example. But you'll see a lot of times in generational trauma that adult never had the opportunity to come into a child advocacy center and share what happened to them and to get the help that they needed. And a lot of survivors will speak about that too when they share about their story openly as adults is, I didn't have anything like the Children's Center. I didn't have the opportunity to have people who cared about me enough. And I shouldn't say who cared about me enough. It just, people who cared about them because they didn't know that there were people out there that can help them on their pathway to healing.
Since we're running short on time, we'll have to cut this episode short. I think one thing that I want to get my point across is let's not normalize abuse. Abuse is not okay no matter what age, what gender, what sexual orientation, what religion, what country you're from. We should not normalize it. And if you see it, definitely speak out about it. Especially if it's impacting you or someone else, or just in general. Abuse is something that's especially big and recognizable now with the rise of social media and everybody sharing their story, which I personally feel it's a really great thing because then we know you're not alone. You're not the only one. And of course, do your own research and look into your own area to see what prevention methods or help you can get.
I am very grateful that you guys could come in here and talk with us. It means a lot, and I'm sure it'll mean a lot for those who might listen to this podcast to know that people do care. And again, thank you for being with us here today.
I personally think the episode was very productive, and I want to thank Dr. Kralik, Mrs. Krause, and Mrs. Davidson for coming in today and being here with us. We'll let you get your last few words in, unfortunately, even though I wish I could be here forever, but we can't. So I'll let our guests get their last words in, and we'll have to end episode soon, unfortunately.
Thank you so much for having us. And on that note, we're always here for you. This podcast may be just an hour long, but we're always available and we're always here for you. MedinaCountyChildrenCenter.org. If you need us, look us up and we'll be available and we're here. And I think it's MedinaCountyChildrenCenter.com. It's .org. Yeah. MedinaCountyChildrenCenter.org. Let's say it again.
Yeah, not much to add to that, but thank you for having us. We have some resources here that we'll leave with you guys that you can link or whatever. If you have questions, if anybody listening has questions, you can, like Ashley said, go on our website, call us. You don't have to be receiving services through us for us to be able to point you in the right direction. Also, calling us or receiving services or resources from us doesn't cost anything. So if money is ever a barrier or you're concerned about something like that, you can call us. Don't have to worry about anything like that. And we're here to support you. So.
And I'll just add one last quick thing for students in the district. We have a Safe School helpline that's totally anonymous. If you don't know where else to go and can't think of a resource, you can always use our Safe School helpline. It's on the website. You can text, you can call, and there's 24/7 counselors on the line there too. So if you're listening to this podcast and think, I have something to report but I don't know where to go, that resource is always available to you.
Before we go, we want everyone to know that support is available. If you or someone you know has been impacted by sexual violence, please reach out to the resources listed in the description below. You're not alone, and help is out there.
Additionally, if you know someone who is a victim of sexual violence, don't stay silent. Take action by offering support, helping them connecting with resource, or even speaking on their behalf if they're unable to. It's crucial that we advocate for victims and ensure they have the help they need.
Remember, we are here to break the chain and end the pain.